All the participants have come because we have given us 10 o'clock. So is my voice is loud and clear to the participants?
Voice is clear, sir. Voice is clear.
Okay, let me share the screen and then let us check whether the presentation is also clear.
This one is now.
Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Is it in full screen mode?
Yes, now it is in full screen mode.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Let me connect and disconnect one more time because I am using two screens to make sure that there is no confusion, because sometimes I used to write on the screen. Okay, so don't get panic if I get disconnected in the next 2 minutes.
Okay, sir. No problem. No problem.
Just want to make sure that things are clear. Okay.
Okay.
If you give me a couple of minutes, I'll be joining. Okay.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Good morning all. Welcome to the last day of our 3 days online faculty development program on sustainable building materials and practices, sponsored by APJ Abdul Kalam Technological University. Thank you all for joining us. Let's start the program with a silent prayer. Thank you. The Earth has a finite number of resources, a growing population, and a need for sustainable construction. Sustainability is avoiding the depletion of natural resources to maintain the ecological balance. I hope you all have learned a lot from the last 2 days sessions. My name is Geetu Shanmugan, Assistant Professor of Civil Engineering Department, MBITS. Today also we have 3 eminent resource persons with us. We hope you find this day also informative and useful. I would like to introduce the speaker for the first session, Dr. Prakash Nandagopalan, Associate Professor, IIT Bombay. Dr. Prakash Nandagopalan is presently working as Associate Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, actively engaged in teaching, research, and consultancy in construction materials with an emphasis on the transformation of knowledge to practice. He obtained his PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras in 2009 in the area of self-compacting concrete. During his PhD, he received the DAG Fellowship for performing a part of his research in University of Karlsruhe, Germany. After his PhD, he worked as Senior Project Officer in various research and development projects at IIT Madras. Later, he joined as Assistant Professor at NIT Calicut and worked till June 2011. Since July 2011, he is working at IIT Bombay. His research team works towards development of sustainable construction materials through valorization of industrial and agro-based residues. Further, the research team is also working on rheology of cement-based materials, blast and ballistic resistant concrete, and lime or cement-based plasters. His research team actively publishes the technical work in peer-reviewed journals, conferences, and magazines. He is continuously delivering technical presentations on topics related to new developments or technology in concrete to various institutions and organizations. He received the Young Faculty Award in 2011 and Excellence in Teaching Award in 2014 and 2018 at IIT Bombay. With this brief introduction, I would like to invite Dr. Prakash Nandagopalan to deliver his talk on the topic, a systematic framework for pre-treatment of sugarcane bagasse ash and its utilization in cement-based products. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity given to deliver a lecture for this faculty development program. I will share the screen and then we can start the presentation. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks a lot again, and let me start this presentation. As far as the presentation is concerned, this is basically a work done by my research team on utilization of bagasse ash, sugarcane bagasse ash, and its utilization in terms of its valorization or utilization in cement-based products. Okay, right. Since this particular FDB is basically on sustainable materials and practices, I thought that I should be talking little on sustainability and then how this particular work is related to sustainability and how to make sure that the sustainability on the material perspective is ensured. So these are the things which we will be covering at this point of time. Okay, right. We'll move on to the presentation. Okay. So before going into the discussion of sustainability, possibly what we can do is let us try to understand what is the current Indian scenario. Whenever we want to do any work, it's possible that sometimes we may do some work, but it may not be kind of creating a conducive environment. So first try to understand the background. So what is the background? The background is, as far as India is concerned, we are having a lot of unprecedented growth on population. So because of which, what happens is the industrialization is enormously growing. Not only that, since many of the people and the literacy rate is increasing, there is a kind of rising income and growing middle class. In the sense, more amount of people are having more access to many products, which means the so-called luxury nowadays become a mandate requirement for the living. So what this leads to? This leads to a kind of expanded industrial influence, because for every product that we are using, okay, every product that we are seeing obviously is going to have some impact on the earth. As far as the earth is concerned, we know that without these industries, it's very difficult to process. Not only industries, service-related production as well. So this is the current scenario. So what are the challenges in front of us? As far as the challenges are concerned, we are consuming the resources at unprecedented rate. It's not only that we are consuming at a kind of very rapid rate. Not only that, if you see the kind of amount of minerals that we extract, okay, just to give an example, as far as the Indian condition is concerned, we are extracting almost like 1,600 tons of minerals per square kilometer, whereas the world average is going to be only 450 to 500 tons per square kilometer, which means we are almost 4 times higher than the world average in terms of mineral extraction. Minerals in the sense, the things which are being used from the earth for making products. So if that is the case, this is a little bit alarming situation. And some of you might be knowing that most of the people are migrating towards the urban areas or cities. Okay, so because of this, what happens? Most of the products which are being made has to be transported such a way that this facilitates the population. For example, if people are distributed across India, then whatever is produced in the local area will be available to them. But what happens? If you look at the statistics, by 2030, almost 40% of the population of India are going to be migrating towards the cities because of job opportunities and other better life aspects. So considering all these things, the consumption of resources is undesirable. Not only that, non-renewable resources are being rapidly depleted. So without consuming the resources, it's very difficult to have a life. But if we are using it at a kind of higher amount of material, then that is not desirable. Not only that, renewable resources are also being depleted faster than the generation rate. So looking at the scenario and the challenges, we need to understand what is the way forward. Now, the only way forward is to have a sustainable environment. I believe that all of you, those who are attending the lecture, definitely might have heard this word for the last 30-40 years, almost like 3 to 4 decades, people are talking about sustainability. Definitely there is a very prescribed definition for sustainability. I'm not going to talk about that. In my opinion, what is sustainable? Whether earth is sustainable, of course, earth is ideally sustainable. If you look at the things in the earth and the living beings in the earth, definitely these things are sustainable. How? If you take any process, let us say agriculture, right from the process when you start to sow the seed, okay, till it becomes a kind of fruit or vegetable or a kind of useful food product, again, the residue goes back to the earth and then becomes a manure, and then again it comes back. So the cycle is very clearly established. You take any process, ideally those things are sustainable. Okay, then why we are discussing about sustainability in earth when every process is getting a sustainable approach? Please understand that because of our lack of understanding and the limitation of science, you might ask a question, why limitation of science? We are growing every day. We have sent rockets to moon, Mars. How come you are saying that limitation of science? What we think is that this kind of understanding of science means we have understood more. Actually, it is not. Definitely there is a progress, but science is basically a tool which helps us to understand the system better and better. This is going to evolve. It's a kind of infinite process. So in that infinite process, definitely the understanding that human being has. Hello? Yeah. So as far as this particular understanding is concerned, there is a limited understanding is there in terms of science. And then there are some kind of vested interests among the human. Why? Because to earn more or to gain more, okay, what happens is we are trying to make some process which leaves some kind of residues. Okay, so this is where we start to discuss. Please understand, sustainability is not something which is new. This is being discussed for 30-40 years extensively, but this is there right from the earth formation. Earth is sustainable until sun is there. Very simple. Okay, so any process, anything in earth is ideally supposed to be sustainable. Then why we are having this sustainable materials and practices, all these things? It has to start from the human being, from us. For example, when we have a discussion, when we are doing some work, when we have some kind of interaction, okay, at the end of the interaction or discussion or a kind of process that we do, if there is a residue in our mind, basically stress, then that is not a sustainable process. Not only mind, body. As far as body is concerned, okay, whatever we have as food has to leave us within few hours of time or certain amount of time. Okay, if there is a residue, then it becomes toxic to the body. So whatever is creating such toxic things is not sustainable. Then only the material world comes in. So to have a kind of sustainable life in Earth, we have to start from the thought process, body, and the material that we are looking at. In this particular discussion, we are discussing about the third aspect. That is basically sustainability in terms of material usage in the civil engineering domain, to make the materials and the practices to be sustainable. Okay, so this is my understanding about sustainability. Definitely you might have heard about all other sustainability aspect in the last 3-4 days or 3-4 decades. Okay, so we do have a kind of sustainable material perspective. First of all, thought process or mind, body, and then we have to move towards the materials that we see. Okay, right. So since this has been discussed about the last 3 days, I'm skipping this particular described definition. We will move on to why in Earth the construction industries have to be sustainable. Okay, because we are relevant to the construction industry. Okay, right. Why? Because for a country's growth, definitely infrastructure is very, very important. As far as infrastructure is concerned, definitely you need cement concrete. For a cement concrete, we need cement. You might know that the cement content in concrete roughly will be in the range of 10 to 15% only. However, if you look at the amount of energy consumed and the amount of CO2 liberated is enormously high. So looking at the trend that we can see here in the left-hand side picture, by 2020, ideally we are closer to 500 million tons of requirement. If you look at the installed capacity of cement production in India, we are closer to 500 million metric tons, okay, at this point of time, which means India has a capability to produce 500 million tons of cement per year. However, the production is little less because that depends on what kind of infrastructure requirement is there. Okay, so we need to understand that this is going to be having an incremental trend because of the requirement from the society. We can't say that we will not produce cement because it is creating a lot of CO2. We have to produce cement. Okay, we have to have alternative means because this particular infrastructural development can never be stopped. Then it will be affecting the growth of the country. So if you look at it, a lot of emissions are getting generated because of this particular production of cement. It is polluting the environment. Not only that, the other two things, whenever we use cement or concrete for infrastructure, because of lack of quality, we are losing the life of the infrastructure. Instead of having 100 years of time, the building is showing a lot of distress in 20 years itself. Hopefully many of you might have seen that. So what happens? A building which is supposed to stand for 100 years is getting deteriorated in 20 years. You do some kind of repair, it goes up to 30 years. By the end of 30 years, you have to demolish and then construct a new one. So you have to do this thing 3 times. So look at the amount of material, energy, time, money getting wasted because of this particular improper workmanship, improper material quality, substandard designs, and so on. So sustainability cannot be addressed just by materials, by practice, by collective effort from all segments of the construction or the stakeholders of the construction. During the process of making and maintenance, a lot of wastes are getting generated. Generally, in my dictionary, there is no such thing as waste. We can say at this point of time, I do not know how to use that material because the so-called waste like fly ash or anything, which was considered as waste, now it is a potential material. We are giving money to purchase that. So we should not say it is a waste, it's a residue which doesn't have any process at this point of time to consume. Okay, we will put it that way. Okay, so what is the issue with these kinds of production of cement? A lot of CO2 gets generated, and you know what is the problem with CO2? Creating problem with the atmosphere, global warming, and so on. These things you know very well. So to reduce the global warming, which is affecting the climate, we need to reduce the CO2 emission. How to reduce? There are different means. Reduce the material usage, it's fine. We can consume little less. Then using the locally available material. What is locally available material? For example, whatever is available in a particular state, that we have to try to use it for the construction. then which means that the logistics involved in bringing materials from outside can be minimized. Then the second aspect is reuse. We can reuse the building components, okay, and then we can also use materials from renewable resources. Say, for example, bamboo. Okay, bamboo construction is happening in many parts of the country. So if bamboo is there in the local area, for example, let us say Assam or somewhere, okay, possibly there they can promote more amount of this renewable based resource material usage for the construction. Of course, it is not that you should, but you can consider this as a potential aspect for reusing. Then recycling. Since we have started our constructions in 1980s, most of the buildings are getting renovated, and then it is having a kind of end of life. Okay, by 1960 onwards, sorry, not in 1980. So what is happening is these kinds of things generates a lot of demolished waste. So can we reuse that? Yes, that we can reuse, but please make a note that the building demolition waste, which you plan to use it in the construction, please have a kind of caution that the building has already exposed to contaminants. You should consider that, and then accordingly you have to design the new building, because many times it's not just taking the concrete, crushing and then using it directly. Salts will be there if it is closer to the sea. So the salt contamination may be there in the mortar which you are crushing and planning to use it in the new construction. So you have to do a meticulous research, proper estimation, proper understanding, then only you have to use it. Okay, because I have seen in many papers and research that you add something to the cement, definitely it gives you something in terms of properties. That should not be the case. First, we have to look at the availability. Then we have to look at the quality. Then we have to look at the potential of the material in terms of reactivity. Then only we have to plan to use it in concrete construction. Okay, because if you add anything to concrete, it will set. If you add any material to cement based system, it tries to mix some kind of product and then it delivers some properties. So we should not move in that direction. We should do some kind of research, understand the material, its potential, then we can plan to use it. That's more rational approach. Today, we are going to discuss about the sustainability. So these things are related to sustainability, that you know. How? The main aspect that I'm going to cover here is basically on the locally available materials. Apart from these reuse, reduce and recycle, better design is also important. Pre-engineered components are being highlighted nowadays. Advanced waste management planning is also highlighted. And the most important thing is appropriate maintenance of infrastructure. This we miss many times. Why? Because whenever we want to construct anything, we give a lot of importance in material selection. We give a lot of importance in design. Okay, we give a lot of importance to construction. That's all. The fourth point, which is most vital point, basically the maintenance is being neglected. Because of this particular reason, many infrastructure, although built with a lot of quality, may not be able to do the service properly because of lack of maintenance. So please understand, maintenance is most important. Like our body, building does need a very good periodic maintenance. So today what we are going to discuss about sustainability through the locally available materials, which is basically agro-based materials. Why it is locally available? Of course, industries are also locally available. Although there are a lot of industries in India, like thermal power stations, slag, steel industry, all these things produces a vital sustainable material, which is like fly ash and the slag, which is basically extensively being used. But the problem is the logistics. Many times we tend to do a lot of research, but we forget the very essential point that these particular products are available somewhere, and this cannot be a sustainable material if it has to travel a long distance, because the amount of fuel needed to transport the material, okay, will be more than having some kind of material which is locally available. So we have to be a little more careful in selecting the particular materials. Why agro-based materials are very important in this perspective? Our country is basically agricultural dependent country. Every state has its own agriculture, and in the agricultural process, there are some residues which are left Okay, earlier agricultural practices will not leave even a single material to be a residue, because everything goes into the cycle of manuring and other things. Many of you may be knowing about that. But nowadays, what is happening is, because of the rapidness in terms of delivering things, quickly generating things, a lot of residues are getting accumulated, and these residues sometimes pose problems in terms of environment as well. Okay, so can we use these agro-based byproducts? Yes, definitely we can use it. Since it is a residue or byproduct, it is not a waste, definitely we can use it. Okay, so today, looking at the agro-based wastes, let us try to see some numbers in terms of these wastes and why it is a problem. Because these agriculture industrial solid waste management is becoming a point of concern. Why? Because these things are polluting the land, water, and air. Why these are polluting? Because of the quantity. If you look at this agro-based waste, especially bagasse, rice husk, jute fiber, rice straw, groundnut shell, all these things are actually dominating the agricultural residues. Okay, residues means at this point of time, we are not able to utilize its potential, either in the raw form or a processed form. Okay, so let us look at what are the other things which has a potential to be used in cement materials, and what are the conditions that we need to look in those particular materials. Say, for example, the agro-based residues which are available in our country or any other country for that matter, if it has a potential to be used in cement materials, then it can be used. How do we assess the potential? In any material and ash, definitely, if we are looking at the silica in terms of amorphousness, basically amorphous silica and alumina, and with appropriate size fractions, definitely this becomes a potential pozzolanic material for using concrete. This is not something new. This everyone knew about it. So whenever you are planning for using any material, please try to look at whether silica and alumina is there, especially for use in cement-based system, and then check whether it is amorphous or not. Because many times you may have silica, but it will be in crystalline form. Then it becomes non-reactive and it will be acting as a filler. So it's very important to know how essentially these forms are there. By using XRD, it's possible to find whether it is amorphous or crystalline. In fact, you can quantify as well. So once you know this particular aspect, then you can check the list of materials which has similar materials in amorphous form, like sugarcane bagasse ash, rice straw, rice husk ash, palm oil fuel ash, bamboo leaf ash, and so on. These things have been done already. So in this particular list, we will be discussing about sugarcane bagasse ash in this particular presentation. Why this sugarcane bagasse ash? So as I mentioned earlier, first of all, we have to look at the availability. Having a material is not that important, whether it is available extensively in the place that we are doing. So this is one of the database which is published. We have taken like only 5 major states which are producing sugarcane: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and UP. UP is the state which produces maximum amount of sugarcane, followed by Maharashtra. This is the sequence. And of course, Kerala also, I believe, in 2-3 places we have the sugarcane cultivation. I think in Padanamthitta, Chittoor, and in one Travancore, I believe. Some of the places possibly this cultivation is happening. I'm not sure about other places. Okay, and in this particular map, you may not see those things because the focus of the particular paper was on only for the 5 states. Okay, why this is essential? Because even in Kerala, if you see, I think the thermal power plants are also less. I believe only 3 thermal power plants are there. I think Kayankolam, Brahmapuram, and one more is there. I think three thermal power, only 3 plants are there, which means the amount of fly ash availability will also be less. Okay. So we need to look at the local available materials and then try to make a decision. So as far as we are concerned, we work in Maharashtra. So since Maharashtra is having a higher amount of sugarcane production, we want to focus on this particular material. Not only that, if you look at the so-called thermal power plants and cement plants, steel plants and other things, okay, those things are located only in the top portion. So this particular portion is rich in sugarcane bagasse, which means there is no thermal power plants or steel plants. However, these things are predominantly having sugarcane plants, which means sugar mills, which means these particular sugar mills which are going to generate this bagasse will be a potential material to be used in concrete. So as far as this particular aspect is concerned, we have investigated. Before going into this bagasse, for some of you, this may be new to you. For those people, please listen carefully. We know that sugarcane is basically is basically extensively produced in India, and we are the largest producer of sugar in the world. Actually, if you look at the sugarcane production, Brazil is the largest producer of sugarcane in the world, followed by India. And it is not a kind of crop which is grown all the year. Generally, if you see it, the harvesting period will be from November to April. That is the period where a lot of sugarcane cultivation harvesting will happen. So which means every 6 months you will get huge amount of bagasse. Okay, so let me refine this bagasse clearly through the process that is being adopted. In the sugar industry, we supply the sugarcane and then it gets crushed. After crushing, the residue is referred as bagasse. Okay, this particular residue, okay, is residues in the sense you might have seen the sugarcane. Even we have taken sugarcane juices. After the sugarcane juices is extracted, the residue, the solid material is being dumped. Okay, that particular material is referred as bagasse. This bagasse is being used as a fuel because of its high calorific value in the cogeneration plant. What is cogeneration plant? Since these plants need power to convert water into steam for rotating the turbine and the power generation and other things, they need fuel. So the fuel is also being taken from this residue itself. So by using a furnace, this bagasse is basically acting as a fuel. Although the calorific value is higher, this doesn't have a standing or it will not provide long-term heat. This has high calorific value. Okay, so it is being used as a fuel material. After the cogeneration plant, the bagasse which gets converted into ash is called as bagasse ash. Okay, right. So this is what is referred as sugarcane bagasse ash. Right. If you look at this particular materials, excuse me, just a minute. So as far as this particular material is concerned, we are producing more than 44,000 metric tons per day. That is the bagasse ash. But this is the old data. This is published in 2015. So possibly by this time, we might have reached almost like 50,000 or more metric tons per day. Okay, so looking at the amount of bagasse produced in the country, it is always desirable to see whether this has a potential to be used in some form of the society. So that's what the first availability study is done. It clearly shows that this much ton, almost 50,000 tons of material all over India is getting produced, which means this has the potential to be used. But does this have a potential to react with cement materials? That we have to check. Okay, right. So we did some kind of analysis, and based on analysis, it was found that this has carbon, silicon, alumina. And the silicon alumina are also amorphous in nature. So please recall the discussion that we had early in the presentation that any material which you plan to use for cement-based replacement definitely should have amorphous silicon alumina. Since this has silicon alumina and it is amorphous in nature, this is basically a potential material for using in cement-based systems. Okay, so based on that, objective is framed mainly to transform SCBA into a suitable pozzolanic material for using cement-based systems. Second, to optimize the SCBA dosage through conceptual approach for using cement-based products. So first thing is the as such received bagasse ash, whether it has a kind of potential to be reactive, although the composition says that we have to evaluate it through certain test methods. Second, once if we find that this is pozzolanic in nature, how much percentage we have to replace and how to optimize the percentages. Can this be done through a conceptual approach? Yes, it is possible. Why do we need to go for conceptual approach? Because these things helps us to maximize the potential of the material used and maximize the sustainability aspect of this particular material as well. So we have collected this sugarcane bagasse SCBA from sugar mill of Maharashtra, and the amount of temperature that these particular bagasse has encountered is almost like 750 degrees Celsius. Generally, for a material to be these ashes or these bagasse to be more amorphous, it should be in the range of 600 to 700. Since this is a high temperature furnace, it has gone up to 750 degrees Celsius. Okay, and then we have done some kind of chemical composition analysis, and if you find this silica content is enormously higher, that is more important. At the same time, there is a ASTM classification, ASTM C618, which clearly defines that any material which you wish to use it as a pozzolanic material should have more than 70%, okay, in terms of silica, alumina, and iron oxides. Since this is 92.59% and it is amorphous in nature, we can definitely and confidently use this material for replacement of cement. And of course, collection system is also very important where you are collecting. When you look at the microscopic images of these particular sugarcane bagasses, different forms are available. Say fibrous materials are there, okay, porous materials are there, tubular materials are there. Then, some spherical materials are also there with lot of porosity. And these particulars are hygroscopic. What is hygroscopic? Hygroscopic means a material which has a tendency to attract the moisture at the same time to hold the moisture. So this particular bagasse ash is having that potential to attract the moisture and hold it, which means the porosity in this system is higher. Okay, right. So this is how we have to characterize. So I'm just recollecting what we have discussed so far. We discussed about sustainability. Why sustainability? Then we have discussed about the residues which are available in India, industries and agro-based. In agro-based, we are discussing about one of the agro-based residues, which is basically sugarcane bagasses, which is a residue from sugar mill in our industries. Okay. In that, first, we want to understand whether this can be used as a potential replacement material for OPC. If it is, we have to understand it. In that understanding process, we are discussing this particular characterization. When you look at the particle size distribution, sugarcane bagasses that was obtained is almost like 25 micron in average size, and cement is almost like 20 micron. Average size is there, D50 is 20 microns. So looking at this one, these particular materials are relatively coarser than cement, which is not desirable in terms of packing effect. So we have to grind it so that the particles becomes finer. Once it becomes finer, it becomes both physical and chemically contributing. At this point of time, it can contribute chemically because of the presence of silica, alumina. But now, if the sizes are getting reduced, it can fill into the pores of cement, and that gives a kind of physical effect as well. So we have to look at the other aspect also, LOI. Many of you might have known about this LOI, loss of ignition. This is nothing but loss of mass. The loss of mass is quantified in terms of loss of ignition or expressed in terms of loss of ignition. As far as ASTM is concerned, for any material that seems potential for use as pozzolanic material, it needs to have less than 10% LOI, which is basically contributed by carbon particles. So the ash received from the industry is around 13% LOI. So as per the definition, it doesn't really pass the pozzolanic criteria. So what we have done is we have tried to incinerate the materials at different temperatures, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, to see whether we could reduce the carbon fractions. Of course, based on the study, it is very evident that the carbon percentage, LOI, decreases with increase in temperature. But the problem is, once we start to increase the temperature, crystallinity pitches in. Tridymite and cristobrite, these are also SiO2. Okay, these are crystalline materials, which means this will not possess reactive potential. So as I mentioned earlier, we need to have amorphous silica for dissoluting into the solution to react with calcium hydroxide and form products. But in this case, since these are crystalline silica, it will not be having a reactive potential in cement-based systems. So what we have concluded is, although the LOI decreases, it is very difficult to get the reactivity. So we are losing the reactivity. Then based on literature, it is very evident that by simply sieving the material in certain sizes, the extra LOI can be reduced, which means if you have a bagasse as from an industry, just sieve it in 300 micron, most of the carbon particles will be removed, which means the LOI automatically gets reduced because all the carbon particles which are having bigger in sizes are removed through sieving. So this is what we have adopted. We did not employ high energy incineration process because whatever is received itself is sufficient enough to react. Okay, right. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so first we try to see if there is some treatment essential to reduce the LOI. By simple sieving, we could bring down the material, bring down the LOI. That's fine. Now, this is fine. We have reduced, but whether the size, which is basically higher than the mean size of cement, if this is going to be a hindrance, then that has to be addressed. How to address? Reduce the size particles. How do we address the size of the particle? By using comminution or particle size reduction. So we used a ball mill. So this ball mill is being used almost, this is 66 liters capacity. And we have used at a speed of 20 RPM. We have used different steel ball sizes. Now I wish to give you a couple of information. Those who are using ball mills, many times we tend to be very casual in terms of selecting the charge to materials ratio and volume of the charge and materials to the volume of the container. We always have to be very, very meticulous in selecting the charge to materials ratio. What is charge? As far as charge is concerned, please understand charge means the steel balls are referred as charges. Materials are referred as SCBA. Okay, generally this should be in the ratio of 4:1 or 5:1. Okay, this is very, very important because unless these things are in this proportion, it will be very difficult for you to get the reduced sizes. Second, if you take the volume of this particular 4:1 or 5:1, that one should correspond to 40% of the mill, which means if there are 100 liters, if the capacity is 100 liters, the volume of charge plus the volume of material should be only 40 liters to have an efficient grinding. Many times, because the materials are needed to be grounded is more, we pump in all the material and then grind it. It consumes a lot of energy. At the same time, the efficient grinding is not possible. Please understand that. Okay. So please understand that these things are very, very important when you are using ball mills. Please don't use the ball mills randomly. It's very important to have an optimized approach to get maximum efficiency in a ball mill. Is there a benefit when we use this ball mill during grinding? Yes. If you could see that as the time increases, the size of the particle decreases. Okay. So from this, it is evident that, okay, so when we grind it, we are able to get the material. But whether 15 minutes or 30 minutes, which is more desirable for this particular configuration of ball mill, that we have to see, because this is basically a lab-oriented study. So to understand what is the optimum grinding time, what we have done is we measured the specific surface area for each time, like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. We take the sample and then do the surface area. And then when we plot these two things, it is very evident that up to 120 minutes, there is a kind of clear increment in the surface area. Beyond that, almost it is becoming saturated. So based on this particular information, it is possible for us to understand that 120 minutes of grinding for this particular bagasse, for this particular ball mill, the optimum time is 120 minutes. Okay. because beyond this, there is not much of a enhancement in the surface area. Why we are looking at this particular perspective on the energy? Why? Because if we are using beyond 120 minutes, the amount of benefit that we get from grinding the material is less than the amount of energy that we consume. Already we are talking about sustainability, and then if we unnecessarily spend energy, then this process also becomes unsustainable. Okay, so that is why we are doing this particular process of optimization in a systematic, simple, and step-by-step procedure. Okay, right. So first we have received the material, did the analysis for chemical composition, checked whether it is amorphous or amorphous silica or not, and then we are moving to thermal treatment. In the thermal treatment, it is very evident that it is not giving amorphousness, rather it gives crystalline thing. So we are not giving thermal treatment. Next, we are moving on to grinding. In that, we have optimized how much should be the grinding time. Okay, now the material is ready. So the first objective is getting completed. The second objective is to optimize the dosage. How do we optimize it? In the sense, how do we optimize the proportions for the processed SCBA? Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, so this particular aspect of optimization can be done by the principle of particle packing. Many of you might be knowing this one. As far as particle packing is concerned, this is one of the vital aspects in terms of concrete mixture proportioning. This word is not there in the Indian standards or any standard for that matter, but the implicit scientific concept behind every mixture proportioning standard is particle packing. How essentially we are selecting the material, how much proportions of materials are being selected, especially aggregates, is having an underlying concept of particle packing. In the standards, we use the word called gradation, but the implicit scientific meaning behind that particular gradation is dictated by particle packing. What is particle packing? It's basically a concept by which we select the right sizes of materials and right proportion of materials for maximum packing density or least white content. The packing density is a concept which is expressed in terms of packing density. Please understand, particle packing is a concept and packing density is the unit by which the particle packing is expressed. There are different ways we can do the particle packing. Generally for aggregates, dry method is appropriate. As far as powders are concerned, it is desirable to go with wet method. Why? There are two things. One is, in dry method of packing of powders, due to this attractive forces, agglomeration happens for particles which are less than 100 microns. So once there is an agglomeration, then it may not be a kind of appropriate method for measuring the packing density, because this agglomeration will disturb the packing. Second, to reflect the real scenario which happens in the cement system, it is basically very important for us to go with wet method, because in concrete what is happening is the wetness is there through which we mix it. Second, to reflect that, we tend to use wet method. So these are the things. This test method I have learned from Germany, from a professor, from a research work of Professor Punka. So this A should be pronounced as, the E should be pronounced as A in German language. So Punka test. This Punka test apparatus is very simple. You need a bowl, you need a spoon, that's all. You need a kind of a squeeze bottle or density bottle with water, that's all. So by using this cup and spoon, it's possible to measure the packing density of any powder combinations. This particular combination is not suitable for ultra-fine materials like silica, fume, and other ultra-fine materials, but generally for fly ash, cement, slag, and other agro-based residues, these things are suitable. So what is the basic principle? The basic principle clearly states that the water is added to the powders or the powder combination, and the water fills the voids. And if the system is closely packed, then the excess water will come to the top, indicating the saturation limit. With that, we can stop the test. So the amount of water which filled in the voids can be calculated basically by using a simple weighing balance. Once we know the volume of water added, then it is easier for us to understand the void content, because the water fills the voids, and then we are stopping at a point where the water is coming in excess of the voids, which is giving a kind of glittery surface. Okay. So by this particular method called Punka test, it's possible for us to measure the packing density. For those who wish to know this one, I can send the paper copy to Professor Jobil, and if you want, you can you can read it. There I have given a very clear understanding about how this particular test method has to be done. Since the time is not there, I may not be able to explain the procedure, but it's a very simple thing. By using simple spoon and cup, we can measure the packing density of any combination of materials. Say, for example, cement is to say fly ash in the ratio of say 80:20. You want to measure this one, then 90:10 and 70:30, and you want to understand which combination gives you the best packing. So you can do this particular combination tests, this particular Punka test, and then it will tell you what is the packing density of all these proportions. The one which gives you maximum packing density can be selected for optimized combinations. Okay, right. It's very simple. You know the volume of water added. By knowing the volume of powder and volume of water, you will be able to calculate the void content. 1 minus void content is nothing but packing density. Okay. Why this is very much convincing for using in cement-based system? It's very easy to perform, requires simple apparatus, consumes only small amount of material, roughly 60 grams of material is sufficient approximately. Then the results are also reliable. Okay, right. So looking at the results for different replacements of SCBA, if you look at the trend, initially there is an increment and then there is a decrement. So the maximum packing density was achieved for 15% replacement of SCBA with OPC. Now, why it is increasing initially and why it is decreasing? Initially, what happens is, since we have ground out these particles, these fine particles fill in the space between the quartz particles. As far as this particular system is achieved, maximum packing density is achieved, then what happens is, although the particles are finer, due to the dominance of these particles beyond 15%, it tries to create some kind of disturbance to the packed system. So each cement particle will have a kind of, say, let us say, there is a container like this, and then the particles are here, and then these sugarcane bagaceous particles are filling here. Okay, now if the percentage of cement part SCBA is increasing, what happens is, this particular cement particle may be disturbed by another particle coming in between, like this. Okay, so what happens is, the void content is invariably increasing. So once the void content is invariably increasing here, then that is getting reflected as loosening effect. We call that as loosening effect. Loosening effect, and that is because of the loosening effect, we are getting a decrement in the packing density. Okay, right. Next, so since I mentioned that we are optimizing the dosage based on conceptual approach, earlier we have discussed about the particle packing as a concept. In this case, we will be discussing about rheology. What is rheology? It's just a science which helps us to understand the flow. Very simple. Okay, the word looks maybe familiar to many of you, or maybe new to some of you. Rheology is something which is known to us. The only difference is, we are not aware that we are understanding the rheology knowingly. For example, every morning we used to take the toothpaste, and then when we try to squeeze the paste out of it, actually what we are doing is, invariably we are using the principle of rheology, okay, but not knowingly. So when you press, it comes out. When you lift the thumb, what happens is, the paste will stop. So what is the meaning of that? That particular paste needs some kind of stress. and the stress when it is applied, okay, reaches a particular point called yield stress, beyond which it tries to move out. Once you release the stress by taking the thumb, the amount of stress applied is stopped. So again, the paste which is supposed to deform stops there. Every material is designed in a very different way. For example, coconut oil is different. For that, you just tilt it, it will come out. Cream, tomato sauce, everything has invariably a rheology. Everything has some kind of rheology. Even if the dishes that we make generally, I don't know how many of you are aware, the word concrete has come from kitchen. Concrete, ideally, the meaning is mixture. So we are cooking for like millions of years. Concrete has been there for the last 300 years. Okay. So we are trying to understand the concrete, okay, many times from other industries. For example, most of the equipments that we use in the civil engineering construction, especially for concrete making, has been taken from food industry, pharmaceutical industry, because the process is same. And I used to give a lot of analogy when I take the class from the food industry, because many times whatever we use are having a process similar in food industry, right? From mixing, plating, everything, molding, right? So for example, we used to steam, right? So whenever we make steam based food, okay, same thing, we do that in concrete also. We do the steam curing. Okay, so there are many analogy I can give, since the presentation is more oriented towards the sustainability. I don't want to divert at this point of time. So the particular aspect of conceptual thing is very essential. So the rheology is basically a science which helps us to understand the flow of the system. How do you understand through rheology? You need a kind of parameter which can express. So that particular parameter is are nothing but yield stress and viscosity. So these parameters has to be measured. How do you measure it? You need an instrument. That instrument is called as viscometer, or the advanced version is basically rheometer. So in this particular aspect of viscometer, what actually we do is we try to give a shear profile, which means we are allowing the material to shear in a fashion that we wish to. Say, for example, in this case, we are giving a pre-shearing. This is called pre-shearing. Pre-shearing means you are making the material to shear in the sense, this basically, is my camera is on? Does somebody please respond?
Yes, sir, it's on. It's on,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. So for example, let us say this is basically the container. So if this is container is there, we are trying to make sure that this particular system is mixed properly. This is called shearing process. Okay. So initially, whenever we are doing some kind of testing, we are doing some kind of pre-shearing. I'm not sure how many of you have heard this word pre-shearing. It's basically something like erasing the memory. Why do we need to erase the memory? For example, many of you, almost 50 people are attending this particular lecture. For attending the lecture, if you have some kind of issues before this lecture, if you carry on with the same thought process, you will not be able to grasp the complete potential of this lecture. What you might have done, you might have taken some deep breath, and then you might have said, okay, clear, let me understand the presentation, listen to the presentation. You are erasing your thoughts. That is called pre-shearing. Same thing, we do it in material also, because when we do mixing in the mixer machine, we are taking, we are pouring, we are involving the material under different processes. So those processes should not influence the property of the material. For that, we are erasing the memory of the material. You might be wondering whether does the non-living things have memory? Of course, yes. Everything has memory. Everything has memory. For example, memory means always we think that brain is having a memory, correct? Generally. But do you know that heart has a memory? Heart has a memory, like brain. Okay. Anyway, so let us not deviate from the discussion. So memory is there for all the things irrespective of living being or non-living being. Okay, so since this material is there with gone under lot of influence of mixing, taking, shaking, and then transferring to other bowl, we want to eliminate those particular process. That is called pre-shearing, eliminating the memory. Once you eliminate the memory, the material will behave stable, and then try to encounter that to low to high shear and then high to low shear. This is what we have to do. Shear means what? You're trying to, this is called shearing process. This is called shearing process. Okay, I'm saying in the horizontal direction, if you do the same thing in a circular motion, is also shear. Because if you take a small element, it is basically one layer is moving across another layer. This is called shearing process. This particular shearing process helps us to understand the behavior of the material. How? When you apply the shear process, excuse me. When you apply the shear process, what happens is the material will offer some kind of resistance. Depending on how the material is resisting, we can understand whether it's a high viscous material, low viscous material. For example, you move the hand in the water slowly and you move the hand fast in the same water. When do you feel more resistance? Can anyone answer? You have a bucket of water, you're moving the hand like this, okay, slowly and fast. When do you feel more resistance?
While moving slowly, sir.
No, when you will feel more resistance when you move faster. Try this one after the lecture, not now. Okay.
Sir, okay, sir.
Yeah. So what is this? This is basically shear rate. So slow shear rate, you're shearing it slowly, you're shearing it faster. So the more faster you move, the more resistance you will feel for the same material. So shear rate is basically influencing the results. Excuse me. Second, you move the hand same way like in water, you move the hand in curd or say honey, you will feel a different resistance, right? Why? Because for the same speed, you are getting a different experience from different material because the response is different from each material because of the integrity of the material. So these kinds of systems can be understood for cement-based system also. Why? Because these things are very important for making the material to mix, place, vibrate, pump. There are so much of process. For all these things, this becomes a base. Okay. So to understand it again in a very simple manner and more stable manner, instead of taking the ramp up data where the machine will also struggle to get the response, in the ramp down data, you will get a stable data. So that is why it is always preferable to get the ramp down. This is called ramp up, ramp down. The ramp down data is being taken and it is being given made as a plot between shear stress and shear rate. The initial stress for deformation is referred as the minimum stress required to deform is referred as yield stress. For example, in the morning, when you press the toothpaste, what happens is initially it will not come, but you have to squeeze it more. Once you squeeze it more, beyond certain squeeze, it comes out, which means that is the amount of stress required to deform the material. That is called yield stress. Okay. Now, what is plastic viscosity? Once it is moving out, okay, once it is moving out, then the slope of that is referred as plastic viscosity. Based on the data, if you plot it, you will get this data, and based on the slope, you can get plastic viscosity. What is the physical meaning of plastic viscosity? It is the resistance, it is the flow resistance after it has yielded. After the particular material has yielded, how much resistance the material is offering for flow. That is what is defined as viscosity. Okay, so using this particular graph, okay, with replacement level, if you make a plot, okay, yield stress versus plastic viscosity, it's very obvious to see that beyond 15% replacement, the stresses are increasing tremendously. Why? Because as I mentioned earlier, that whenever packing density increases, white content decreases. So for a given amount of water or paste, that will facilitate better workability or deformability. If there is a loosening effect, then it creates a lot of resistance. Because of the resistance, this will have a lot of issue. What kind of issue it will have? These issues will be there in terms of resistance for flow and other things. So it is very evident that the 15% which gave maximum packing density is getting reflected here. Up to that, there is not much of a difference in terms of values, both viscosity and yield stress. But beyond that, the values are increasing tremendously, which clearly states that 15% is optimum for this particular combination. Okay, so we have optimized the OPC and SCBA dosage. Now, how to optimize the SP dosage for that? Simple test methods are available. As far as the test methods are concerned, we use mini-slum test. Almost every one of you know. You have to make the paste, pour it into the container, and then lift it, measure the diameter in 2 different directions, take the average, and then report it for different percentages. Okay. So there is one more test, marsh cone test, also available. I prefer to use mini-slum because of the easiness and the relevance of this one with the concrete, because there also you use slum cone, which is related to workability, and the fundamental parameter related to mini-slum test is yield stress. For superplasticizer, generally this influence the yield stress of the system compared with viscosity predominantly. So you have to select a test which is suitable to understand the parameter precisely. Since superplasticizer influences yield stress and mini-slum cone is dictated by yield stress, we have to use mini-slum cone test for SP dosage. This is also being used. However, marsh cone is more predominantly viscosity dominated apparatus. Okay, of course, this can also be used based on the conditions. Of course, these conditions are also a little bit tricky. So I prefer to use mini-slum over marsh cone. So to do the test with increase in SP dosage for this 85% OPC and 15% SCBA, the SP dosage is increased, PCE based SP dosage, and you could clearly see that the mini-slum flow increased, and then beyond this one, there is not much of an increment. The same thing with marsh cone, the time decreased, beyond this one, not much increment. So this 0.25% SP dosage is the optimized dosage for this particular system. Okay, now we have optimized the SCBA dosage. We have optimized the SP dosage for the optimized proportions of OPC SCBA. Now we are talking about always this conceptual packing and all those things. Does it really have some impact on the compressive strength? Otherwise, there is no point, right? So all the proportions were fixed, and the cement combination and the standard sand is being used. Why standard sand? Many times, if you are not standardizing the sand or using standard sand, there are higher amount of problem that this gradation of sand will influence the strength. So my suggestion to all of you is, whenever you are going to do any experimental experiments related to concrete or mortar, please make sure that the gradation is constant for all the things. How do you ensure gradation to be constant? You have to standardize the sand or standardize the aggregate. When you go and then take the sand from the pit which is stored outside your lab, every time the gradation changes, because you take from the bottom, then the particles slide down, so the gradation changes. Instead, sorry. So instead, what you could do is you could try to take the sand, sieve it in say 4.75 to 2.36 one bin, 2.36 to 1.18 one bin. Like that, you keep the bins, and then take the materials like 5%, 10%, 20%, 15%, 5%, so that every time, since the gradation is same, particles are same, the influence of sand on strength will not be there. Otherwise, depending on how the sand is packed, the strength will be influenced and standard deviation will be more. Since we are doing this particular practice for the last 10 years, although we are not having any issue so far, our standard deviation between 3 specimens tested is very, very less, which means we are more consistent. Okay, and whatever we claim as the influence of this SCBA, okay, is getting reflected clearly and evidently. You can look at the plot on the right hand side. With increase in bagasse percentage, the strength increasing, and beyond that it is decreasing. Since sand is constant, proportion of sand is constant, water cement ratio is constant, SP dosage is constant, the only factor which influences this particular increment in strength is mainly because of the presence of SCBA, sugarcane bagasses. Okay, so we have seen that by optimized, by systematic method of treatment process of SCBA into pozonic material plus conceptual based approach for optimization of dosage will definitely give us a better strength. For example, when compared with control, almost this is like 6 to 7, 8 MPa increment in strength is there. Okay. Now, many times we miss one important point. Always we highlight that the 15% is the best combination. Please understand, on a sustainability note, actually I would insist to go with 25%. Why than 15%? Because when you look at this control concrete with reference to control, this is the control concrete where no SCBA is there. The 25%, despite 25% replacement, we are able to get more than the control reference mortar. So we have to go for 25% as best thing. Okay, because in this way our sustainability is ensured more. Okay, right. So far we have discussed, we are almost ending the presentation. Maybe in a couple of slides I will be closing the presentation. So far we have discussed about SCBA and its potential for use in concrete. Okay, so based on the investigation discussed so far, we have proposed a simple method. Collect the SCBA from the sugar factories, note down date, time, type of ash, the what kind of boiler, temperature and everything. So once you know these basic information, then try to see whether these material is having a potential to react or not. Does it really need any kind of treatment, thermal treatment, mechanical like grinding treatment and so on. All those things has to be assessed. So first, thermal treatment. If the boiler has already exceeded 800 degrees Celsius, please do not invest money, effort in again incinerating that particular material. If the incineration temperature is less than 600 degrees Celsius, okay, then you can go for measurement of LOI. If the LOI is less than 10%, definitely you can go for 4. Otherwise, if it is less than greater than 10, go for a little bit of heat treatment to make sure that that is less than 10%. Otherwise, we can also go for sieving the coarser fractions, right? By sieving the coarser fractions, carbon particles can be removed. Okay, right. If it is less than 10 or once it becomes less than 10 LOI, check the reactivity, basically the silica and other things, whether amorphousness through XRD and the chemical composition through XRF. Once it is done, then optimize the grinding time using ball mills. Then 3 things we have to do. One is SCBA optimization dosage through particle packing. Sorry. Then optimization of SP dosage for SCBA, optimized SCBA blends. And then we have to validate that in the binder combination using mortar. So with this, the particular framework, one can achieve the sustainable use of the industrial agro-based residues into a potential product. Excuse me. So, the summary of what we have discussed. We have discussed about sugarcane bagasse ash, its material characterization, and then try to see, we have discussed about thermal and mechanical treatments, how to optimize it, how to rationalize it, what are the important points that comes under thermal and mechanical treatment. Then we have discussed about 2 concepts, particle packing and rheology, following which how to optimize SP dosage and validate through compressive strength. Based on these things, we have proposed a framework. Based on the framework, there is a clear evidence that we can maximize the potential of this SCBA usage in cement concrete. Sorry. So along with my associated research team, okay, we have published almost like 8 to 9 papers on use of agro-based wastes in cement-based system. Okay, so the current presentation that I have made is basically based on this particular paper. Sorry, excuse me. basically based on that paper. Okay. And if anyone needs any paper, you can write to collectively write to Mr. Jobil, and then I can share with him the papers. Okay. And thanks for the patience listening. Now we can pose the questions. You can pose the questions. I can answer the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your knowledge. It gave deep insights about the pre-treatment of sugarcane bagasse ash, how to transform it as a suitable pozzolanic material for use in cement-based products, and how to optimize the SCBA dosage through conceptual approach. It really revealed some interesting facts. I hope all the participants have enjoyed the talk. One reminder, e-certificate will be provided to all participants. For that, I request all the participants to fill the feedback form available in the chat box. Now it's time for question answer session. Participants can unmute and ask their queries or may type their questions in the chat box.
I think currently one by name Professor John Samuel has asked, burning of paddy wheat are creating a lot of problem and air pollution, whether burning of sugarcane is causing air and other type of pollution. Unlike I don't know how many of you are aware of this one. If you see North India, the North India in the sense Punjab, Haryana, that area, there are a lot of wheat and paddy cultivation is there, especially rice-based thing. So what they do is after harvesting, they will not use this rice straw ash. Okay, generally in Tamil Nadu and Andhra and other places, we take that particular straw and give it to bulls and cows as a feed, right? But they do not. Why? Because these things are affecting the teeth of the particular bull and cows. So what they do, since it is not desirable as a cattle feed based on them, they burn it. So because of that, only Delhi and other places get choked because of air pollution. The question is whether that kind of thing happens in sugarcane bagasse. No. Why? Because these, after the extraction of sugarcane, within the sugar mill itself, the bagasse is stored outside the sugar mill, and as and when needed, it is being transported to a furnace, which is a kind of enclosed entity. But while burning, there will not be a problem. But after burning, the ash gets stored outside, and these ash may contaminate the air, and then that possible pollution will be there. So because of that, we have to use it and fix it in the cement-based system. That's the answer to Professor John Samuel. And then, yeah, there are no other questions as of now.
Sir, can I ask a question to you, sir?
Yeah.
Myself, Dr. Vasudev. I am from Talkers Institute of Science and Technology. Sir, I have just a simple doubt, like sugarcane bagasse ash as such has any retarding effect to the concrete that has been prepared?
Okay, because of the sugar content.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as such, there is no retarding effect because the kind of material, which is basically glucose and other related things, will be taken during the extraction itself. And then this is being incinerated to almost 800 degrees Celsius. So it will be almost an ash. So using this will not have any retarding effect. Based on my experience, we did not see any retarding effect. We have gone up to 30% also.
Sir, is there any variant of siliceous content observed in the bagasse ash that has been received elsewhere from places, sir?
Yes. So one of my PhD students did two kinds of investigations. One is within the same industry, since this production is happening over a period of 6 months, whether there is any variability in the proportion, which we have published in one paper, harvesting season. So what I will do is I will ask my student to share the papers with Professor Jobil, and then collectively those who need can get it from him. So
Yes,
one,
sir.
the variability of but of
Bagasse.
course, certain papers are not published, it is accepted. So once it gets published, then or in press, then I will share it. Whatever paper
Okay,
is it, I will share.
It's
with
okay, it's
you.
okay, it's okay, sir. I understand, sir. Is that
So,
the
Second,
content of
let me complete, Mr. Dr.
Yes, sir.
Vasudev. Second
Yes,
one is we have done investigations in Maharashtra and Karnataka, almost covering an area of 80,000 kilometers square, almost like 30 different sugar mills, and collected ashes. And then the variability has been huge. Sometimes the LOI is less than 20, say, let us say 5%, sometimes as high as 50% also. So that variability.
variance in siliceous content. So
No, not siliceous content, LOI. Siliceous
Oh, okay.
content may range from say like 60% to 80%.
that much variation can be possible.
Possible. It depends on how we are incinerating, what is the source. How
Actually, is that the climatic conditions prevailing in certain region influences this variance in the siliceous content, sir? Like here in Kerala side or in Tamil Nadu side, we will be having a little bit of more of rain, and those areas you have mentioned will not have will have only a moderate type of rain. Is that the climate conditions that is influencing the same, sir?
There will be variabilities. Definitely, Dr. Vasudev, there will be variabilities, but that variabilities may not be huge for a given terrain. For example, if it is in Kerala or Tamil Nadu, the variability will be little less only. Based on rain, there will not be anything, in my opinion. We haven't investigated that perspective, but I don't think rain is going to create. But if you consider Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, the bagasse, definitely there will be a variability because of the soil conditions, because of the storage condition, incineration temperature, silica in the sense, how much amorphous silica is our interest, not the amount of silica.
Yes,
So
understood,
total
sir.
silica is different, amorphous silica is different.
Amorphous silica.
We don't bother about total silica. It can be 90%, 95%, doesn't matter. But how much amorphous silica is there? 40%, 50%, 60%, that is very, very important.
Got
So
it, sir.
that definitely is going to vary.
Okay. So if there is any doubts, I think through sir or directly I can just contact you in this regard, because we are also doing certain papers on this. So
I will
hope
share
you
the
will be
papers. I will share the papers with.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for, and it was the rheology part I like the most, because that part has not been discussed in detail in any of the papers. So I love to listen to it, sir. It was very nice, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I will share that particular slide. If you want, you can take a picture and then you can search for the paper. Is it visible to you?
So it has not arrived yet, I suppose, sir.
All right, let me share this one. Yeah, if others can ask a question, meanwhile.
Yeah, this paper, I have just make a note of it, sir. I have just made a note of it.
Yeah. So other questions, if you have.
Yes,
Sir,
thank you. Sir.
there
Thank you,
is
sir.
one more question.
Yeah.
With the amount of sugarcane production in India, can we make a mass production of bagasse ash for making cement-based products?
Yes, yes, why not? This is what my plan is actually. I'm working towards that. Try to see whether there can be a bulk utilization of this bagasse ash-based products. Yes, it's possible, and we are working in that direction only.
Okay, sir.
In fact, when I was at NIT Calicut, we were looking for using this coir pith also. So whatever is available in Kerala, people can explore. Try to see what kind of material available, and try to see if that can be used for making building products.
Okay, sir. Participants, if any other questions, please unmute and can ask yourself or can type in the chat box.
One more question.
Yeah.
Sir, if you want to do some experiments in the lab for the undergraduate students with the bagasse ash in Kerala, where it will be available nearest, sir?
I think as far as my knowledge is concerned, Padanamthitta, Chittoor, Travancore, these are the places where I could see the sugar plants, sugar mills. So you can collect it there. Otherwise, if you are in North Kerala, then I think you can get it from Karnataka. If you are in the middle of Kerala, possibly you can get it from Satyamangalam areas in Tamil Nadu, where sugar plants are cultivation is there.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So all the participants, sorry,
I think no more questions are there, sir.
all the participants are faculty members or students?
Faculty members, sir.
Okay. So can I ask some questions to them if they don't have a question to me?
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Definitely. They are. Okay, then let me ask this question to all the people. Okay, because it is always good to interact with people because okay, say let me start with this one. Why we tested at 28 days? If somebody can answer, I will be very happy.
Sir, if it is cast on that is on a Friday, then 30 days will fall at a Sunday. So it's best to remember the dates. 4 weeks later, we can cast it or check the dates on 28 days.
Okay, good. So I will explain that in a very elaborate manner so people can understand better.
Yeah, this is in colloquial language. I just said that. That's all.
Yeah. It's correct. Okay. So strength, generally, if you see at the age of 1 day, the normal concrete, you will be getting 30% of strength. In 3 days, you will be getting 50% of strength. In 7 days, approximately 70%, 66 to 70%. In 28 days, you get 90%, right? This is what the general thing says. Okay, so don't get confused. It's 90% in the sense there is a kind of confusion. How come 90% in 20 days becomes acceptable? 90% of target mean strength. Okay, that one should know. So it is something like you design for M30, you target for 38.25, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
30 plus 1.65 times standard deviation. Okay, this 90% is of 38.25. Okay, so that is what the meaning, which is more than 30 MPa. Okay, right. So what happens is, if you look at the difference in the age, it is basically 21 days. If you look at the difference in the percentage increment, it is 20%. So beyond 7 days, every day almost 1% is there. So it really doesn't matter if you test it on 27 days or 29 days.
30. Yeah.
Whatever it is. Okay, so it is not, for example, if you test it on 27th day, it will be 89%. 29th day, it is 90.5 or 91%. So it doesn't matter actually. But the problem is, whenever we try to test it on, cast the concrete on Monday, and if you are doing it 27 days, it will be Sunday. Second, if you are casting on Friday, and if you choose the age 29, then it will be a Saturday. So this was not with us early because when we were ruled by British people, okay, we were not working on, they were not working on holidays. So that's why these things are there. But I'm totally against these kinds of numbers. Nowadays, this 28 should not be there. We should be targeting about the performance-based specifications. We can't say that it is 30, 28 and other things. We should be going beyond that. Whenever we use any kind of SCM, supplementary cementitious materials, we should test it at 56 days. This is there in ACI code, okay, 212 and 232. Okay, it has been clearly mentioned, but as far as IS standard is concerned, still the enforcement is not there. But it is always desirable to test it at 56 days whenever we use any kind of supplementary cementitious materials like fly ash, slag, bagasse ash, rice ash, and so on. Okay. Right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the
good
information.
explanation, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
It's
if
good
you
explanation.
if you explain this way, then the students can understand better. Okay, so do we have
Yes, I
time for
understand,
one more question? Because it's 11:20.
There are no more questions.
Okay, questions are there. Please ask. I will. Do I have to read it or where is it? In chat box, it is there. I'm not able to.
No more questions, sir, in the chat box.
Okay, fine. Anyway, okay, fine, good. So yeah, I have so much of questions. I can keep asking, but I think it is time to say goodbye to all of you. If there is anything else, please let me know. Okay, then.
Thanks listening to you, sir. It was nice listening to you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. So we'll be having a kind of sustainable process, hopefully. Because in the thoughts of the participants, if there is no stress after my lecture, then that is a more sustainable lecture. Okay, good. Okay, then. Take care and have a sustainable life. Okay. Okay, then.
Feedback is there, sir. Feedback.
Sorry, hello.
So one participant will give the feedback, sir.
I see. Oh, okay.
I request Associate Professor Bindu Sebastian of KMA College to give a feedback on the session. Sorry, sir. I think she's having some problem.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine. Okay, good.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you for your
thank you,
time.
thank
Thank
you.
you for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this opportunity. I hope I have interacted with all the faculty members, and my best wishes to all of them. Since we are teachers, we have a lot of responsibilities, and I know that you are doing good. Don't think that whether in this tough situation we are not able to contact students and everything. It will be always good to interact with students through online and then help them to get.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry for the delay.
Okay. So,
Morning, all.
continue, ma'am.
Respected Prakash sir, organizers and fellow participants, let me thank the organizers and the Civil Engineering Department of MBITS for organizing this seminar, FDP, on sustainable materials and practices, which is a very relevant topic in the current scenario. During this past 2 days, we could gain much information on the sustainable materials and practices. Now, Prakash sir, he had given a nice informative talk, and he had told that sustainability should start from the thought process, that is from the mind, body, materials and practices. Thank you, sir. And regarding that sugar bagasse, he had actually started from the scratch, that is from where it is prepared to the processes and the manufacturing, the testing processes. Thank you, sir, for sharing your expertise in spite of your busy schedule as academician, researcher, and consultant. For the nice talk, I sincerely thank you, sir, on behalf of all the participants. Thank you all. Thank you once again.
Thank you so
ma'am.
much, madam. Thank you.
Once again, thank you all for the active participation, and thank you, Dr. Prakash Nandagopalan, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well organized, and I'm happy to see there is a meticulous planning gone in terms of planning this thing. My best wishes to all the organizers and the participants as well, and best wishes for your research and future career as well. Bye.
Thank you,
you.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So our first session is over. We will have a break for 15 minutes. and start the next session at sharp 11:40. Thank you.